Hi everyone, Sid here, ready to get my shave on. Tonight's lather, as often, will be Pro Razzo Green. Tonight I'll be adding some lavender and citronella, and the aftershave will be Bobanum that I got from Lush. You didn't see me put the Pro Razzo Blue on, but I'm really digging the smell. But I want to go through this because this thing will expire. So for today's topic, I'd like to talk about someone whom I've been a fan of for a couple of years. This person helps people engage in damage control. And by that I mean, let's say someone decides that you owe him or her money. Let's make this person a man. So let's say someone decides that you owe him money based on a code violation. This will be something that you can use potentially to help protect your property, or at least minimize the damage. Of course, none of this is guaranteed. If I didn't name this person yet, his name is Marc Stevens. And I really love his show. You can find him on marcstevens.net. I'll put a bunch of links in the show notes. And the first thing I want to get into, though, I want to start by saying what Marc Stevens is not. Marc Stevens is not one of these sovereign citizens or Freeman stuff. Just to be clear, I want to summarize what the general Freeman position is. Basically goes blah 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 birth certificate, blah 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 name in all caps, blah 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 uniform commercial code. That's not really the approach that he goes for, because the fatal flaw in the Freeman stuff is that you're taking on a position, and the problem with that is you're taking on a burden of proof. So let's take the example of a parking ticket, something not very controversial. So by going for the Freeman stuff, you're trying to defend yourself from a parking ticket by taking on a burden of proof. Whereas what Marc's approach is, it's basically challenging the prosecution on their presumptions. And I'm going to warn you, these presumptions go so... These presumptions are so fundamental and driven deep inside of us through conditioning that some of you might think I'm crazy for even suggesting that it's possible to bring him into question. So the core assumption is, you know what? Before going into that, I'll develop that into I'll do sort of a role play. There are basically two main contexts where this approach gets used. One of them is something that he likes to call the call of shame, where he calls up bureaucrats and whatnot and just challenges their position. And the other context is court, where you're actually defending yourself against a code violation. And I use the term code violation very deliberately, by the way. It tends to fly over most people's heads. I don't know if I'll have time to get into that. I hope I do in this video. I might publish other videos if I don't cover everything that I would like to about Marc Stevens, which is likely to be the case. But we'll see. So basically, the advantage of a call of shame is that you're not in the pressure isn't as high, because there's no judge there to threaten you with contempt of court, or as I like to call it, the fuck you argument. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, I mean, the contempt of court is basically a judge saying, boom, you're in jail, and that's it. That's all that's required. So since a call of shame has less pressure, because you don't have a judge who could potentially just decide, you know what, fuck you, you're going to jail. There's also less pressure for me to explain it properly. So in this hypothetical situation, I'll put you in the role of someone who's using the Marc Stevens approach, and I'll play the role of the bureaucrat. So let's say that I'm some police chief in some city. You know what? Let's take a fictional city called Sidsville. So I'm the police chief of Sidsville, and you call me, and I answer the phone. And basically, the first part in a call of shame is really easy. You have to get them to agree with their own position, which is usually really simple. So you call me and you say, hey, I have some questions about how the Sidsville law is applied. And I go, sure, let's say I'm in a good mood that day. I go, sure, what's your question? And as I just said, this part is pretty simple. So you say, okay, there's something that I've heard of. And again, this is the crazy part where some of you, sadly a good deal of you, will think that I'm crazy for even suggesting that it's possible to question this. So you go and ask me, yeah, it seems to be the working assumption that just because I'm physically in Sidsville, that the Constitution and Code of Sidsville apply to me. Would you agree with that? 9 times out of 10, the bureaucrat like me, I'll say, you're damn right they do, because you're in Sidsville and I have jurisdiction because the Code of Sidsville applies to you. That's fine. The next step is simple also. I'll explain what's difficult about it in a second. So you say, okay, great. You just agreed. Just because I'm physically in Sidsville, the Constitution and Code of Sidsville apply to me. Now, what evidence do you have to prove that? And here's where things get a little sticky for most people, because let's just say that in all the years that Marc's been doing this, no one's been able to produce a shred of evidence that just because you're physically in, let's say, the state of Arizona, that the Constitution and Code of Arizona are applicable to you. So the hard part in that, once we reach that part of the call of shame, is that it's virtually impossible to get a straight answer from a bureaucrat when you ask them that pretty simple question. And let's just say that in most cases, the straightforward, honest response would be, I got nothing, I have no evidence to prove that. Now, if you are using this in court, the advantage of doing this versus the Freeman stuff and name, birth certificate, all caps, is that instead of taking on a position and therefore taking on a burden of proof, you're actually challenging the prosecution's assumptions and asking for evidence that they're supposed to have anyway. And the thing is, and most people don't get this, the thing with code violations is applicability has to be a part of the crime, because without the code there would be no crime. So something like a parking ticket, there wouldn't be anything wrong with parking your car there if there wasn't words on paper written that says that they do. So basically, you can't prove a code violation without first proving that the code applies. But of course, in courts, people just want to skip that part and go right to whatever merits of the case, like your car was at this location at this time or whatever. So the typical dodges that you'll get, now we're back into the call of shame context. So you just asked me for proof, or what evidence I rely on to support the position that I just agreed with. And the typical dodge is, if you're lucky, I'm not used to this, and I'm gonna go with circular logic. So basically, well, if you want proof that the Constitution Code of Sidsville apply to you, I'll refer you to such and such sections of the Constitution, or such and such article of Sidsville Consulate Dictate number yada yada yada, which is circular logic. It's basically saying that the Constitution and Code apply to you because the Constitution says so. It's really the same kind of logic as saying the Bible is true because it says so in the Bible. So if you're lucky, I'm going to throw out some pretty easy to detect circular logic and just refer you back to the code or the Constitution to prove itself. Now, in sneakier situations, what'll happen is I'll just misrepresent what you're saying because you haven't taken a position. You've asked me a question about my position, and you've asked me for evidence to support it. So one of the typical ways that I would misrepresent you is to say that you're debating. Oh, well, if you wanted... yeah, I shaved my skull. So if you want to debate the Constitution, I don't have time for this, blah, blah, blah. But really, you're not debating. You're asking me for questions. You're asking me for evidence to support my position. I'm the one... Again, if this was court, I'd be the prosecutor. I would be the one advancing the claim. The code violation rests on the assumption that the code applies, and therefore I have a burden of proof, and you don't. So why take on a burden of proof unnecessarily by doing the Freeman stuff? And now we're back to the call of shame context. Another way that that I would misrepresent your position is by saying that basically I would spin your questions as statements. So I'm saying, well, if you're saying that the Constitution and Code of Sidesville don't apply to you, then blah, blah, blah. I just respun your questions as statements, which is, again, dishonest, and it's not really what's going on. And what else? Actually, yeah, in court, other things that can happen is sometimes the judge will, and this is part of the reason why I've never done this in court. Maybe I'll probably do some more videos about this approach because I find it really fascinating. But sometimes the judge will actually help the prosecutor out and take on his or her burden of proof. And it can be really sneaky to detect that, because if you can catch it, even if you're found guilty, you can get it reversed on appeal. Potentially, again. None of this is legal advice. I'm just some schmuck from Montreal. Who knows? But I know that by challenging their position and asking them for facts that they're supposed to have anyway by their own rules, it's way more effective than taking on a burden of proof when you don't really need to. And of course, another classic dodge would be something called gaslighting, where they try to make you feel stupid, like, oh, well, if you were paying attention in your civics class, you would know, blah, 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 blah. But none of that is evidence that the Constitution and Code apply to you. So basically, the reason I'm mentioning this is because in the context, I often run into people who's saying that they're going to contest speeding tickets or whatever. And I'm always curious when I ask them, so what are you going to do? And I'm secretly hoping to hear, well, I'm going to challenge applicability in jurisdiction. I've never encountered someone who says that, and I'm trying to stimulate curiosity into this approach, let more people know that it exists. I think it's potentially way more effective than needlessly taking on a burden of proof. And I know I've gone way over, like my aftershave and stuff is applied, and normally if these cameras weren't on, I'd be cleaning up right now. But I just wanted to let you know that this is a potentially effective way to engage in damage control when someone is coming after your money. I'll definitely shoot another video on this eventually, probably not next time, but I really think it's fascinating. I've been a fan of this guy for years, and that's about it. So thank you for watching. You can like, comment, share. Am I crazy? Do I want people to just die in the streets because there's no proof? Let me know in the comment section right there. So you can follow me on Twitter also, @SidRockMTL. And thanks a lot. I'll see you at the next shave, and you have a great day. Later.